I've recently upgraded my controller from this, which is a standard PlayStation 5 controller with nothing on the back, to this, which is the Scuf Envision with back paddles. This is a PC-only controller. I'm going to break down whether or not I think it was a good purchase and whether or not you should use it for Call of Duty. Enjoy. Now, first things first, I'm going to break down the reasoning behind my purchase. So, I recently upgraded to a PC a few months ago from a PlayStation 5. I mainly play Warzone, and I've been using the standard PlayStation 5 controller to play Warzone using DS4 Windows, which essentially tricks the PC into thinking that the PlayStation controller that is plugged in is actually an Xbox controller. However, I've been looking for a little while now to upgrade to what you would call a Pro controller with sort of paddles and extra buttons and stuff on the back to make my gameplay a little bit better. So, Scuf recently launched the Scuf Envision, which I was kind of toying with for a little while. I've also looked at various other controllers, maybe stuff like the Xbox Elite. PlayStation also brought out their own sort of Pro controller. But the thing I like about the Scuf controller is that it's PC-based. This controller, in particular, the Scuf Envision, does not work on consoles. And there's two kinds of it. So we have the Scuf Envision on the right here, which is the one that I bought, and there's a Scuf Envision Pro. There are three differences between these controllers. The one on the left, the Scuf Envision Pro, is wireless. You can either play wired or wirelessly. That is one of the main key points. Another one is that there are digital triggers. So on the Scuf Envision, the one I've got, these triggers just press down like a normal trigger, exactly how they would. On the Scuf Envision Pro, there is two little switches on these triggers, which turn them into digital triggers, which essentially makes it like a mouse click. And then the difference between this one, the Scuf Envision, and the Scuf Envision Pro, basically on the back and on the sides, there's sort of like a grip tape on the Scuf Envision Pro, whereas on this one it's kind of smooth. But the reason for my purchase of the normal Scuf Envision, as you can see, is $129.99 rather than $179.99. The reason for my purchase of this was because I've gone from playing with this is the standard PlayStation 5. It won't have to be wired in anyway, and I would always play wired purely for low latency purposes. Things happen on Warzone and in Call of Duty in milliseconds, and to have a controller with the least input time is what is key for that. Secondly, again, this doesn't have any grip tape on it. This is just a standard smooth controller. So I just went for that. I didn't need it. This doesn't slip out my hand or anything like that, so I didn't need any grip tape on it. And then finally, the only point that I was kind of over was the digital triggers. However, I'm a product of Call of Duty from the end of the PS2 / early PlayStation 3 era, where back in the day, we would use L1 and R1 to shoot an ADS. That was kind of what it was for PlayStation. We never used the triggers, even on the early days of like Call of Duty 4 on PlayStation 3. That was never a thing. We would never use the triggers. The triggers were always for grenades. So I've taken that force of habit with me throughout life. And these main buttons up here on the top of this, on the Scuf Envision, on the very top there, when I move the wire out of the way so you can actually see, so it doesn't get caught on my desk. These are kind of like digital triggers anyway. They're very much just like click buttons anyway. So that was a key factor behind my decision. And I just thought, well, I'm not going to use the digital triggers, so I'm going to save myself 50 quid, really. Now, let's talk about the good points of this controller. Now, this controller feels really good. Build quality is brilliant. I've got some control-free grip tape on. I'll explain that a little bit later on the thumbsticks itself. However, this controller feels so well made. It feels like the buttons are like very much like mouse click buttons, which I really like. It feels like it's well made. These ones on the back as well, like very mechanical buttons. Everything feels good. You can also got these two buttons on the side as well, which you can sort of press while firing. I kind of don't use these in combat, I will be honest. I kind of use this one to dolphin dive off, say, mountains or buildings to be able to pull my parachute in Warzone a little bit quicker. This one doesn't get used, so I don't really use that one for anything. And then obviously on the back, I've got sort of slide, jump, stuff like that. It feels really comfortable to hold, really nice to hold. And then you've got also these G buttons on the bottom with a little bit of RGB lighting on there. And basically, these buttons can be remapped to anything on a PC. So I use the first one to mute my Discord, and then I use the second one to fully sort of deafen my Discord, especially when I'm in Gulag and stuff like that. I use the middle one to actually sort of mute and unmute my in-game mic on Call of Duty, something I could not do at all with the PS5 controller. So the fact that all these buttons are remappable is great. Now I mentioned that the buttons on this controller are remappable, and that is purely down to this software right here. To get this controller to work, you need to download the Corsair iCUE software. And basically what this allows you to do is, if you go into mappings, as you can see, this is what my controller does. This is how the buttons work. This is how I change the buttons. So this back button here, which is this one here, basically allows me to ping enemies. So I'm fighting, I'm doing that, and I can ping enemies, get a live ping off on enemies as I'm fighting. Don't have to take my finger off any sort of thumbstick and sort of hit the D-pad or anything like that. I've got it perfectly right there for that. And as you can see, as I mentioned just there, this is a keyboard button. I've keybind something on my keyboard. I think it's the letter Z, actually. I think I've keybind, which basically just allows me to dolphin dive. That button on my keyboard, if I was playing mouse and keyboard and not do anything else, other than dolphin dive, and I've now bound it to this button here so I can dolphin dive off buildings, pull my parachute, get that little bit extra distance in Warzone. So it's great that you can sort of customize all of this. You know, it's especially these buttons here. I think for me are the best going. I haven't actually designed G4, G5, anything. Because I don't know what to use them for yet. I might use them, maybe change a scene on my stream, something like that. I don't know what to use them for yet. Like, the level of customization there is brilliant. Then you've got hardware mappings, which you can't change these. Basically, these are sort of like preset mappings. And if for whatever reason you don't set up your own custom mappings, this is what the hardware will be built in. This is what this is. So you can't change any of these. It is a bit of a pain, but it is what it is. As I mentioned as well, you got the RGB. You can customize the RGB lights if you really wanted to. To be fair, I don't really notice them all that much when I'm playing, so I'm not really bothered about that. But yeah. And this is the part where this customization goes really, really wild. So you can set up dead zones for triggers and your thumbsticks. So I can press that in, and it works in real time in the dead zone. And you can change the dead zones here at the bottom. So if say you think your trigger's a little bit too sensitive, you can obviously adjust that and you can make it there. You can also sort of have like sort of the left trigger, you know, how you want it to respond. You know, if you want to be aggressive, it'll probably react a lot quicker than maybe if you didn't have that. I've just got them on default purely because Call of Duty's got its own controller settings in its own settings. But if you were playing a game that didn't have these settings in, then this is the software that would allow you to customize whatever. Same again with the thumbsticks. You can move them around. You can do whatever. It's very, very responsive. You can set dead zones there. But as I say, as I only play Call of Duty for the most part, there's no point in me messing around with these. I'd have set them to linear and dead zone because Call of Duty has its own sort of dynamic aim assist, so there's no point in me changing them in here. If I were to change them in here and then try and do the same settings in Call of Duty, the controller will feel really, really weird. It's also a really light controller, but it actually does have vibration rumble packs in the two bits here. I've got them turned off because at the end of the day, I don't need my controller doing this as I'm trying to shoot. Call of Duty's, obviously, as we all know, Call of Duty's visual recall is a bit wild at times anyway, so yeah, we're just moving it from there. And you've got device settings where basically it allows you to sort of save. This middle button here, you can change through profiles, so maybe you share a controller with somebody, or maybe you're playing a shooting game 1 minute, racing game the next. You can flick through these profiles, and then basically you can change whatever you want. You can also go to eagle mode and adjust the brightness of the RGB. For the most part, in my opinion, it's a very good controller. However, there are some things wrong with it, and we'll get onto them now. So as I mentioned, I went from the PS5 controller to the Scuf Envision. Now, PlayStation 5, I never had this issue. The thumbsticks on the PlayStation 5, I very much like. They're very much very, very grippy. I don't really slide off them or anything like that. I feel like it's a very solid controller. However, with the thumbsticks on this one, I've had to put on these Control Freak grips purely because the thumbsticks, I feel like, are very much just not grippy enough, which is quite mad. I criticised, obviously, the fact that I didn't need grip tape on there. However, I could do with some grippier thumbsticks, so I put these two grips on. These are just the standard. These actually fit the PlayStation 5 controller. I didn't use them for the PS5 controller. I've actually bought them especially for this controller. However, you put them on, and to be fair, my thumbsticks feel great. Now, it's like very, very much, don't feel like sliding off them when I'm trying to shoot or anything like that. It's not really like a deal breaker for me. I don't mind. But yeah, my aim feels a little bit better using these as opposed to not using them. But yeah, it might be a matter of personal preference, though, how you do or do not like the thumbsticks. For me, though, it was a key part of buying this controller was the position of the thumbsticks because it's very much in the same place as the PlayStation 5 thumbsticks. I did look at the Xbox Elite, but obviously, as we know, Xbox do things a little bit differently, and I couldn't think I could get used to the thumbsticks like that. Now, something I praised the controller for was its level of customization, especially with these mappings using the iCUE software. However, this is also the controller's biggest downfall, and I would seriously listen to this part if you're going to consider buying this controller. If you listen to nothing else in this review, listen to this part. The Corsair iCUE software is, to say the least, a little bit temperamental. I've had it in times where this software has crashed in-game when I'm in a gunfight like this. What? My controller's died, no! My controller's died! Controllers died! No! My buttons are I hate this program so much. And because of that, when it crashes, it means that none of the back buttons work, none of my actual mappings work, and imagine you're just playing a standard, like, sort of controller layout for Call of Duty on a standard controller with no back buttons or anything like that. That's what this turns this controller into when this crashes randomly. For me, it always crashes first game of Warzone every time I play. It never crashes like third or fourth game. It's always the first game. I don't know why it crashes in the first game. I don't know why it's crashing. However, I've kind of come up with a solution that, for me personally, has worked a little bit to reduce the crashes, where the point where if I started like this before I start playing Call of Duty, then it doesn't crash at all. And I'm going to share that with you now. Basically, the iCUE software is meant to just run in the background. You shouldn't really have to worry about it, and it starts on startup when I turn my PC on, so it's always there in the background. It's kind of like DS4 Windows when I was using my PlayStation controller. That's how it was like. It's just always there. So if you come down to here, it's just in my dock, as you can see there, iCUE. That's how it works. However, when I'm wanting to play Call of Duty, before I even load up the game, what I'm doing is quite simply this. So I'm right-clicking it and quitting it. So therefore, it's now no longer open. Basically, these back buttons won't work. Nothing on this controller will work. It will just work like a bog standard, non-paddled controller. Then what I'm doing is I'm coming down to here, minimizing obviously my OBS so you can see my desktop, and then going to iCUE, and I'm going right-clicking it. I'm going to run it as an administrator. I'm going to press yes, and then this will fire up the iCUE software like it normally should. And this is basically how it would if it was down in the dock or anything like that. And then basically, all I do after this is just minimize it, and I don't touch it for anything else. I just leave it there. It runs in the background. It's still at the bottom here, though, in my taskbar. I can click it, I can bring it up like that, rather than just being purely in my dock. I've done that purely to see if it would stop it crashing, and for me, personally, I don't crash hardly anywhere near as much. To be fair, I think I've crashed once in probably, I'm going to say, 20 plus hours of gameplay running it as an administrator. It really reduces the crashes. I don't know why it does, and it might work for you. So if you are going to consider buying this controller, that is what I would recommend before trying to play any game with it. So for all the software problems, would I recommend the Scuf Envision? In all honesty, yes, I would. As a casual player, I would recommend this wholeheartedly, especially if you're playing on PC. I mean, only if you're playing on PC, actually, because it doesn't work on consoles. Because of the price point, this cost me £130, okay? That's hard-earned money. And I get that it is probably a lot of money for that. However, this brand new by itself is £60. So we're kind of only just doubling the price, just a little bit, for this. And to be fair, I think look over the software issues, which I can. I knew the software issues was going to be a problem before I even bought it. This, for me, is absolutely unreal money. I don't know if I'll buy the £180 sort of pro version of it, but £130 for a professional controller, or a professional controller, for me is great value for money. You got to think, like, even Xbox and PlayStation's own sort of in-house built pro controllers are £150 upwards. I think the PlayStation one's actually £200. Scuf, PlayStation and Xbox controllers, they're in excess of like £200. Racer's just brought out a pro controller for the PlayStation. That's £250. So £130 is an absolute steal, in my opinion, for what you would call a pro controller with buttons and stuff on the back. It does feel a brilliant controller to hold and play with. So I've been really, really enjoying using it. So from a consumer point of view, it's great value for money. However, if I was going to run in sort of Call of Duty tournaments and stuff like that, I would maybe give this a miss and maybe pick up a Scuf actual PlayStation 5 one and then use it through DS4 Windows. Purely because I can't rely on the iCUE software 100% to do what it's meant to do all of the time. I wouldn't want to be playing for some amount of money, especially maybe if you have to pay at the end of the tournament, with this controller, and then for iCUE to die halfway through a couldn't fight or something like that. That's not what it would be for me. If you could invest a little bit more money in it, maybe to play Call of Duty a little bit more seriously, then maybe do go for a different Scuf controller or a different sort of pro controller altogether. But at the end of the day, though, for me, this is Scuf's first dabble into a PC-only controller. Going forward, I would love to see them either sort the iCUE software out drastically so it doesn't crash, or create their own software purely for the Scuf Envision. But going forward, you've got to think this is Scuf's first sort of drive into that. It's a brilliant starting point for PC-only controllers. And I think in years to come, this is going to be the only controller for PC players.